Most people never change. That's the hard truth. Not because they can't, but because they never decide to. They wait, they hope. They talk about what they want, but they never cross that invisible line between wishing and committing. I've met people who've been saying someday for 10, 20, 30 years. Someday I'll start the business. Someday I'll get in shape. Someday I'll get serious about my finances. But someday is a disease that steals years while pretending to be patient. It whispers comfort, but it delivers regret. Now, the reason most people don't change isn't lack of knowledge. They've read the books. They've gone to the seminars. They've heard the advice. The problem isn't knowing, it's doing. You see, knowing what to do and doing what you know are two very different things. A real decision has power. Once you truly decide, the how reveals itself. But until that point, every plan is just a performance. You talk about it, but you don't move on it. You rehearse success instead of living it. The great secret of progress is simple. You decide once, and then you manage that decision daily. You don't remake it every morning. You don't debate it every time you feel tired. You just keep it. You made the decision, so now you honor it. Success is never denied to anyone. It's only delayed by indecision. Most people live in a fog of almost ready, almost started, almost committed. But almost doesn't count. You don't almost win a race. You don't almost change your life. The day your life begins to change is the day you stop saying, I'll try, and start saying, I will. Trying is another disguise for hesitation. When someone says, I'll try, what they really mean is, I haven't decided yet. You change your life when you move from preference to priority. Most people would prefer to succeed, but only a few make it a priority. Preference is easy. Priority is costly. Preference asks for convenience. Priority demands consistency. The difference between the few who do and the many who don't starts here, with a decision. The kind that doesn't wait for the perfect time or the right feeling. The kind that says, I start today. Someday is a myth. Today is the only doorway to progress. The minute you decide, the moment you commit, everything starts shifting. Energy, ideas, people, and opportunities begin to align with your direction. You can't steer a parked car. And most people live with the brake on, afraid to move until they're sure. But you'll never be sure until you start. Motion creates clarity. Decision creates momentum. The world doesn't respond to hesitation. It responds to commitment. When you decide, life starts cooperating. When you delay, life starts decaying. That's the harsh truth. Most people never change because they never make that real decision. But the few who do, the ones who look in the mirror and say, no more waiting, those are the ones who start writing a new story. So let the word someday leave your vocabulary. Replace it with today. Replace I wish with I will. That's the beginning of the separation between those who want to and those who will. The average pattern is easy to spot. Most people build their lives around comfort, not growth. They follow routine like it's a religion. They wake up the same way, go to the same job, talk about the same problems, and call it stability. But what they really call stability is often quiet surrender. Comfort feels safe, but it's a slow decline. It doesn't announce itself as failure. It hides behind phrases like, I'm fine, it's not that bad, or maybe next year. You see, comfort convinces people they're living when they're only surviving. Most people don't question their patterns because patterns feel familiar. Familiar becomes easy. Easy becomes automatic. Automatic becomes invisible. And what's invisible can trap you for a lifetime. They defend their routines like treasures. They defend their excuses like truths. And they convince themselves they're trying. But trying without change is the same as standing still with motion in your hands. You look busy, but nothing moves forward. The average person is not lazy by nature. They're lazy by habit. They've built systems that protect their mediocrity. They do just enough to avoid discomfort, but never enough to create momentum. Ask the average person how things are going, and you'll often hear, pretty good. But pretty good is the enemy of great. Because when life is pretty good, there's no pressure to change. You settle. You stop reaching. You stop imagining what more could look like. Most people live on repeat. The same day, the same thoughts, the same actions, played over and over, dressed in slightly different circumstances. They change jobs, but not habits. They change cities, but not disciplines. They change relationships, but not standards. So the results repeat themselves. The truth is, patterns produce outcomes. And if you follow the average pattern, you inherit the average result. It's not punishment, it's mathematics. You can't plant seeds of ease and harvest excellence. You can't live by comfort and end up in mastery. People often say, I'm doing my best. But if best doesn't include growth, it's not best. It's familiar. Growth is uncomfortable. It stretches. It challenges. It requires new effort. And that's why the crowd avoids it. Comfort doesn't just keep people where they are. It quietly convinces them they're right to stay there. It defends itself with logic. It says, you've earned a break, or you're doing better than most. And soon, better than most becomes the ceiling. If you do what most people do, you'll get what most people get. Average actions create average outcomes. It's that simple. The extraordinary live by a different rhythm. While the average repeat, the few redesign. While the average talk, the few test. While the average defend, the few adapt. You can spot the average pattern because it resists change. It values comfort more than progress. But the moment you decide to break that pattern, to trade ease for effort, you step out of the crowd. You stop blending in and start building out. The crowd will call it risky. They'll say you're pushing too hard, moving too fast. But remember, every critic is just someone defending their own comfort. You don't need their permission to evolve. You only need your decision to persist. The average pattern repeats. The exceptional pattern refines. One lives in reaction. The other lives in design. The difference? Intention. So if you ever catch yourself defending an excuse, repeating a stale routine, or feeling too comfortable with average, that's the moment to pause. Not to feel guilty, but to get honest. Comfort is not a reward. It's a warning. The day you trade comfort for growth, the cycle breaks. And that's when progress begins. Excuses are the language of limitation. They sound reasonable, but every excuse is a quiet surrender. The moment you explain why you can't, you begin teaching yourself that you're powerless. And that belief shapes everything that follows. People don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they defend their limitations. They spend more time justifying the problem than solving it. They say things like, you don't understand my situation, or it's easy for others. But life doesn't listen to explanations. It responds to execution. Excuses transfer control. The instant you blame something outside yourself, you give it the steering wheel. You hand over power to the economy, to the weather, to your boss, to your past. But the moment you take ownership, control returns. Taking responsibility is not about guilt, it's about authority. It says, if I created part of this mess, I can create the solution too. Responsibility gives you back the power to change. Most people think accountability is a burden. It's not. It's freedom. When you stop explaining, you stop waiting for permission to improve. You start acting. You stop wishing for better circumstances and start becoming the person who creates them. Excuses build walls. Ownership builds doors. Every time you say, I can't, you close a door. Every time you say, I will find a way, you open one. The words you use either shrink or expand your possibilities. You'll hear people say, it's not my fault. And maybe it isn't, but it's still your problem. Life doesn't grade on fairness. It rewards initiative. You can't control the wind, but you can adjust the sail. Complaining about the wind won't move the ship. The difference between the crowd and the few isn't intelligence, it's ownership. The crowd waits for something to happen. The few decide to make it happen. The crowd blames. The few adapt. The crowd looks for excuses. The few look for leverage. And here's the key. Excuses feel true in the moment. That's what makes them dangerous. They sound justified. They comfort you when effort feels heavy. But comfort doesn't create growth. It creates dependency. Every excuse rehearsed becomes a belief. Every belief repeated becomes an identity. And once an identity forms around limitation, change feels impossible. That's why you must catch excuses early, before they start shaping who you believe you are. When you move from excuses to ownership, everything shifts. Problems become puzzles instead of prisons. Obstacles turn into instructions. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what can I learn from this? Ownership doesn't mean you control every outcome. It means you control every input. You control your attitude, your effort, your preparation, your response. That's enough to tilt the odds in your favor. Life improves when you stop explaining and start executing. Because explanations feed ego, while execution feeds results. People can argue with your excuses, but they can't argue with your progress. So, when you catch yourself explaining why something didn't work, stop mid-sentence. Replace the excuse with a plan. Replace blame with adjustment. Replace complaint with correction. That's how you move from powerless to powerful, from won't to will. The shift is invisible to others, but unmistakable inside. It's the day you stop giving reasons and start producing results. Discipline is the great separator. It's what divides those who dream from those who do. Most people quit when it's inconvenient. The few keep going when it's hard. That's the line between won't and will. Motivation feels good, but it's temporary. It's like a spark. It lights the fire, but it won't keep it burning. Discipline is what keeps adding wood to that fire, long after the feeling fades. People often say they need to feel inspired before taking action. That's backward. Action creates inspiration. You move first, then the feeling follows. If you wait until you feel ready, you'll wait forever. The average person lets emotions drive decisions. If it's raining, they skip the run. If they're tired, they skip the work. If it's uncomfortable, they avoid it. But the exceptional build discipline like muscle. They act independent of mood. They train themselves to do what's required, whether they feel like it or not. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what you've decided. When you honor your decisions over your moods, progress compounds. You begin to trust yourself, and that trust becomes momentum. Most people underestimate how small disciplines build enormous outcomes. Missing one workout doesn't matter. Spending a little extra doesn't seem dangerous. But repeated over time, those small choices add up. The same principle works in reverse. A few small disciplines practiced daily create massive change. Discipline is not punishment. It's structure. It's the system that protects your potential from your impulses. Without it, life drifts toward ease. And ease never leads upward. Look at anyone who's achieved something extraordinary. and you'll see a pattern of disciplined repetition. They didn't wait for motivation. They built systems. They kept promises to themselves long after it stopped being exciting. The truth is, the gap between the average and the exceptional isn't talent. It's consistency. Anyone can work hard once in a while. Few do it every day. Anyone can be disciplined for a week. Few stay disciplined for a decade. Discipline means doing what needs to be done, even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching, because that's when your character is built. That's when your identity is forged. It's not the big moments that define success. It's the small ones repeated until they become second nature. A little more discipline each day and a little less dependence on how you feel. That's how the line moves. The average stop when it's uncomfortable. The exceptional push when it's inconvenient. That's why the gap keeps widening. Discipline doesn't make life easier, it makes you stronger. And once you're stronger, what used to be difficult becomes normal. If you want change, you don't need intensity. You need consistency. Intensity excites the start. Consistency guarantees the finish. Discipline builds the bridge between intention and result. You can't wish your way across that bridge. You walk it, one committed step at a time. And here's the irony. Discipline eventually becomes freedom. The habits that once felt restrictive become the foundation for choice. You're no longer controlled by impulses, by laziness, by moods. You're in charge. The average person wants the reward without the repetition. They want the outcome without the process. But every success story is a story of discipline written over time. So when it's early, when it's cold, when it's inconvenient, remember this. That's the moment the separation happens. That's the moment when most people stop and where you keep going. That's how the divide forms. That's how the difference grows. Those who win don't rely on luck. They rely on structure. Habits are their hidden machinery. While most people hope, they plan. While others react, they prepare. You can predict the direction of a life by the direction of its habits. Every small routine is a vote for the kind of future being built. Winners don't rise to the level of their goals. They fall to the level of their systems. Habits are what keep progress alive after enthusiasm fades. A goal gives you purpose for the moment. A habit sustains it for a lifetime. The few who rise understand this. They don't wait to feel ready. They don't depend on reminders. They turn discipline into ritual and ritual into rhythm. They schedule growth. They write it down. They track their progress. They measure, not just dream. Habits shape identity. Identity drives destiny. When you keep a promise to yourself, you cast a vote for the person you want to become. Do that long enough, and your self-image shifts. You no longer see yourself as someone trying. You see yourself as someone who follows through. That's the quiet transformation most people miss. Success isn't built on bursts of inspiration. It's built on consistency that outlasts emotion. Most people let their habits form by accident. They repeat what feels easy until it becomes automatic. But the few design their habits with intention. They ask, what kind of person would achieve the results I want? Then they build behaviors to match that person. Habits are silent builders. They don't make headlines. No one cheers when you choose the salad instead of the dessert, or when you read instead of watching TV. But over time, those small, invisible votes accumulate into something visible and undeniable. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You only need to begin keeping promises to yourself. Wake up when you said you would. Do what you said you'd do. Write it down, track it, finish it. Every time you follow through, confidence grows. And here's something powerful. Once you trust yourself to keep small promises, you start believing you can keep bigger ones. Confidence is built, not given. It's earned through evidence, your own evidence. The average rely on moods. The few rely on mechanisms. That's why the few win. They've learned that structure is not restriction, it's protection. It guards priorities from distraction. It guards purpose from procrastination. If you want to know why some people always seem to make progress, look at their calendars. Growth is scheduled. Reflection is scheduled. Reading, planning, thinking, all scheduled. What gets measured gets managed, and what gets managed improves. It's not glamorous. It's not dramatic, but it works. And it keeps working because habits multiply over time. Small disciplines compound into large advantages. You don't rise to potential. You fall to pattern. Build the right pattern, and success becomes predictable. Not easy, but predictable. Habits turn direction into destiny. And that's why the few will always outpace the many. They don't just set goals. They build systems that guarantee progress whether they feel motivated or not. So the next time someone says, "You're so lucky," you'll know better. You'll know it wasn't luck. It was structure. It was the small choices, repeated faithfully, that built the strength most people wish for, but never organize. You'll never act above what you believe. The ceiling of performance is built in the mind long before it's seen in results. The few who rise do so because they think differently. They believe effort compounds. They believe failure instructs. They believe success is earned, not found. Belief is the engine of behavior. If you believe growth is possible, you act differently. You try again after setbacks. You search instead of surrender. But if you believe life is fixed, you stop before you start. Most people live under the weight of disbelief. They underestimate themselves because they've repeated small doubts for too long. They've built invisible ceilings. They say, "That's just the way I am." Or, "People like me don't get those breaks." And just like that, potential stays locked behind language. But belief isn't built by shouting affirmations. It's built by evidence. Every time you act, you prove something to yourself. You can't talk yourself into confidence. You must work yourself into it. The few who win understand this. They see effort not as punishment, but as privilege. They know that every repetition strengthens belief, and every belief expands possibility. You see, most people measure what they can do by what they've done. The few measure by what they can become. One looks backward, the other looks forward. The direction of your gaze determines the direction of your life. The mindset of possibility isn't naive optimism. It's disciplined imagination. It looks at challenges and asks, "What can this teach me?" It looks at failure and says, "Good, now I know what not to do." Failure doesn't define the few. It refines them. The average fear failure as proof they're not good enough. The few see it as data. They extract the lesson, adjust the plan, and move again. Belief creates endurance. When you believe your actions matter, you'll stay the course longer than those who doubt. You'll outlast discouragement. You'll outwork those who rely on bursts of emotion. The mind is the first battlefield. If you win there, the rest becomes mechanics. Because once you believe something is possible, your brain starts finding ways to make it real. Doubt shuts down creativity. Belief activates it. That's why small wins matter. Every time you finish a task you said you would, every time you resist a distraction, you're not just improving performance, you're expanding belief. You're proving that change is possible, and your mind records that proof. The few keep their minds fertile. They feed it with ideas, not complaints. They spend time with possibility thinkers, not excuse makers, because environment reinforces belief. And belief must be maintained. Just like muscle, it weakens when neglected. That's why reading, learning, and reflection aren't luxuries. They're necessities. They keep the mental soil rich so new dreams can grow. The average thinks small because they protect comfort. The few think big because they protect purpose. It's not arrogance, it's stewardship of potential. They understand that how you think about what's possible determines how much effort you're willing to give. Every great achievement begins with one conviction, that it can be done. Without that belief, talent hesitates. With it, even average ability becomes unstoppable. So when doubt whispers, don't argue, act. Let your actions be your answer. Each step forward is a declaration that possibility still lives. And over time, belief becomes certainty. That's the mindset of the few. They see what could be, act as if it already is, and refuse to stop until it becomes visible. Every person reaches a crossroads, a moment when the years start to repeat themselves. Same routines, same disappointments, same explanations. It's the moment when life quietly asks a question: will you keep repeating years or create a new one? That moment is the turning point. Some ignore it. They tell themselves it's not the right time, that they're too busy, too tired, too late. So they keep the pattern going. And years later, they look back and realize time didn't change them. It only aged them. But a few recognize that moment for what it is, an invitation to begin again, on purpose this time. They understand that change isn't something you feel, it's something you decide. Feelings follow action, not the other way around. The crowd waits for inspiration. The few move with intention. That's what separates the turning point from another false start. Most people wait for a surge of motivation before they begin. The few begin, and the motivation shows up because of motion. Every breakthrough starts with a decision, not a mood. You don't need a perfect plan. You need commitment. You need to say, this is the line. No more half effort. No more excuses. From this point forward, I'm in. You see, change feels dramatic when you decide, but it happens quietly afterward. It's not lightning bolts and applause. It's ordinary mornings handled differently. It's small choices made consistently. It's one more rep, one more call, one more hour when most would quit. The turning point is rarely loud, but it's always decisive. It's when you stop negotiating with weakness. It's when I'll try turns into I will. It's when comfort loses its argument. At that crossroads, two voices speak. One says, stay where it's safe. The other says, move before you're ready. The first voice sounds reasonable. It wants to protect you from discomfort. The second voice wants to introduce you to your potential. Which voice you choose decides the next chapter of your life. And here's the truth. No one escapes that choice. Every person meets it. Most step back. A few step forward. Stepping forward doesn't guarantee immediate success, but it guarantees growth. And growth guarantees new outcomes. That's the progression of all achievement. Decision, discipline, direction. When you decide, you break inertia. The hardest part of any change is not the middle, it's the beginning. Once you start, energy gathers around movement. You'll meet new people, new ideas, new strength you didn't know you had. But you must cross that line. The line where most people stop and you begin. Change doesn't require perfection. It requires persistence. The turning point is not the end of struggle. It's the end of excuses. From that moment on, struggle becomes teacher instead of enemy. The world doesn't reward potential. It rewards proof. The turning point is when you stop talking about what could be and start building what will be. And once you've crossed that line, you realize something profound. It was never about capability. It was about choice. The power was always there, waiting for a decision to release it. So when you reach that crossroads, and you will, remember this: you're not choosing between easy and hard. You're choosing between repeat and rise, between the past and the possible, between won't and will. And that choice, made once and lived daily, becomes the foundation for everything that follows. You will because you'll act on principle, not emotion. The crowd moves when it feels right. The few move because it is right. That's the difference.